Today is Friday, August 22nd, 2021, and here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered. An entire Texas town shuts down due to COVID. Also, in Texas, 2 Black men sue Walmart for racial discrimination. And we look further into the healthcare worker resignations in Mississippi and what that means for existing patients. The Supreme Court asserts it is Congress's job to authorize a federal eviction moratorium. And the man who shot and killed one of the Capitol insurrectionists is speaking out. And Donald Trump is facing a lawsuit for his role in the January 6th insurrection. This year is the 58th anniversary of the March on Washington. So we talk about the impact and what progress we've made since then. A California high school is in hot water after a video of students abusing a black doll they call Shaniqua goes viral. Also, updates on the Afghanistan evacuation and the relief efforts in Haiti. I'm Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, sitting in for Roland Martin. It's time to bring the fun on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's Uncle Roro, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky.
COVID cases soar nationally and internationally. Worldwide, there are 215,841,754 reported cases and 4,493,781 reported deaths. Florida recorded the largest single day of COVID deaths at 901. That's the biggest increase in pandemic history. America has 39,360,270 reported cases and 652,086 deaths. Medical and state officials are urging citizens to get vaccinated and wear masks. According to the CDC, teens aged 16 and 17 had the highest rate of infection. A Texas town shuts down due to COVID. Iran, a small town with a population of 1,200, had to shut down businesses and the school district. Over 100 residents tested positive in 2 weeks. When the school opened, 25% of staff and 16% of students were infected or exposed, forcing the district to close. The nearest ICU is over 100 miles away, making it dangerous for sickly residents. In Mississippi, take Mississippi's caseload. There were 3,425 newly reported COVID cases and 34 deaths yesterday. Yes, just yesterday. To date, there have been over 400,000 reported cases and 8,214 deaths. On average, the state has 3,200 reported cases and 40 deaths per week. We reported earlier this week about how this crisis is causing a massive healthcare shortage across the nation, and Mississippi isn't exempt from that problem. Joining us now is Dr. Justin Turner, the CEO of Turner Care. Dr. Turner also serves as the COVID-19 task force for Mississippi State Medical Association and the City of Jackson. Welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered, Dr. Turner.
Glad to be here, Doc.
Wonderful to have you. Now, the numbers that I just recited to me are startling. Mississippi is a state that struggles in many respects. There is disproportionate levels of poverty in that state. There are already health challenges that are disproportionately present, I would argue, among the citizens of that state. How are you handling this COVID surge when you're already at a disadvantage?
Well, I have to tell you, every physician here in the state can tell you that it has been very, very difficult. Things are very, very frustrating. And a lot of healthcare professionals are quite honestly burnt out. We're doing everything we can. You know, we felt as if when the vaccines came out, you know, we had our biggest tool in the toolbox, and we began to see some of the numbers begin to get better. And all of a sudden, we have this emergence of the Delta variant. And it's like, you know, every time we make 3 steps forward, we're making 5 steps backwards.
Absolutely. I can imagine how frustrating that is. I mean, what is it like, just from the perspective of a healthcare provider, to know that in essence you're putting your your health on the line every day? You're working long hours trying to serve people, many of whom aren't even heeding the medical the recommendations that they've been getting. How does it feel like just to have this onslaught come at a time when many of us may have thought a few months ago we might be going downhill by now?
Yeah, so even before COVID, you know, like you said, Mississippi already has just a plethora of different health disparities that we're already dealing with. We had COVID on top of it, and it's really been, you know, just problems on top of problems. So here we are now, you know, maybe working, you know, I used to work 60 to 70 hours a week. Now it's like 80 to 100 hours a week. I would normally just see maybe 20 patients a day in the clinic, and now sometimes it's 30 to 35. In the hospital, it's even worse. Just last week, University of Mississippi Medical Center just basically created space in a parking garage just so we can be able to have patients. As you mentioned, you know, we're having issues with shortage of resources. So we have outside help that's coming in just to provide nurses and medical personnel just to be able to help us out, because we're literally treating patients in parking garages because the hospitals are so full. We do have some people in Mississippi that get it and that understand, but unfortunately there's too many people who are still downplaying the severity of this virus. They are still spreading misinformation after misinformation. That part is very frustrating because as a healthcare worker on the front line, yes, I still have to go home to a wife of mine who has asthma. I have an 11-year-old who has asthma who actually is on quarantine right now because she was possibly exposed yesterday. So this definitely hits home. You know, we basically only have about 37% of the population that's been vaccinated. When you have states like Vermont that is in the mid-60s, it's disappointing because it's like Mississippi. Why are we okay with continuing to be the last, especially when we have about 8,000 people who have died from something where we know that the vaccine definitely helps, reduces the risk of severe hospitalizations. It reduces the risk of death. Over 95% of people in our hospital who have COVID are unvaccinated. Over 90% of the deaths are people who are unvaccinated. So at this point, we don't know what else to do because it seems like everything that's being done, unfortunately, is falling on deaf ears.
You know, it's very frustrating to me, and I'm sure it must be this times a million in terms of the level of frustration for you, is the degree to which this issue has been politicized. This is a public health issue. You are literally putting your life on the line, putting your wife and your child's health on the line to be able to serve people, while at the same time you are fighting against politicians around the country and in your specific state that are making your job that much easier because they're either trying to make it, trying to not have people wear masks or to discourage people from getting the vaccine. I mean, how are you able to fight back against a political dynamic like that that's fighting against you every step of the way?
Yeah, I don't know if Texas, Mississippi, and Florida, you know, leadership just get on the phone and figure out how we can make our state more miserable. I don't know. But, you know, as physicians, we signed the oath to do no harm. You know, I went to Mahari where our motto is worship of God through service to mankind. And that's all we're about. The virus does not care what your political affiliation is. It's not Democratic. It's not Republican. You know, it is here and it's here to destroy and it's ravaging our communities. You know, this is a Republican-led state. And unfortunately, it appears that a lot of people are more married to politics than they are to purpose. Because this nation that we talk about, you know, as far as America being, you know, land of the free and home of the brave, we talk about freedom. The true freedom is the freedom to have life and to have that more abundantly. People are talking about this survival rate of 98%, but here in Mississippi, our mortality rate is 2.2%. So you mentioned about the 3,000 plus new cases. So if you look at 2.2% of that, you know, you're looking at basically, you know, almost about 40 people that are going to die out of that within the next few weeks. I just had a patient just 2 days ago who's 51 years old. His mom just died last week. Now, I sat down with he and his mom approximately 2 months ago, went through the science, shared this information with them because they were on the fence. They were hesitant. They was hearing that the vaccine changed the DNA. They was hearing, well, what's the point of getting the vaccination if you can still get COVID? So after education, they agreed. Honestly, like the majority of our patients that I've had a conversation with over the last couple of months. But I got a call saying that they both was in the hospital and they both were suffering. They both were on a ventilator. The mom did not make it. Now, fortunately, he did. He came home and he was on home oxygen. And guess what he said? He said, Doc, I'm ready to come in and get the vaccine now. And I said, well, honestly, just tell me, what made you not get it when you told me you would? You know, Doc, I just don't know. So we can probably get his lung capacity back, but we won't be able to get his mom back. And it's just, it's really, really breaks our heart because we probably have about 4,000 patients here at Turner Care. And since the vaccine has come out, that's the only patient that has died.
Oh, my goodness. That is a heartbreaking lesson for anybody to learn the hard way, especially when they didn't have to. If you had to give one last piece of advice to individuals right now who are maybe like that gentleman and his mother, and for some reason, they're putting off getting the vaccine. They're lackadaisical about wearing their masks. They don't take it seriously, or they think that some of these conspiracy theories about the vaccine is actually true. What would you tell them about what they need to do now to save their life and the life of the individuals that they love?
Well, I would tell them that I'm a medical doctor. And I wouldn't expect them to come to me and ask them how to fix their refrigerator if it breaks down. I wouldn't expect them to come to me and ask me how to fix their motor or their car if it's not working. But as far as the science, I want you all to trust the same people that you trusted when your kids had a snotty nose, the same people you trusted when you had chest pain and you was concerned about a heart attack, the same people who actually encouraged you to make sure your child got the vaccination for the mumps, the measles, the rubella, that you all got as children. We're the same scientists. We're not here to discourage you, but we're also not here to discourage you. We never told you that the vaccine was 100%. What we told you is that the vaccine reduces the severity of disease and reduces the risks of you dying from it. We told you about 95%. So that means that there's some people who still going to have some problems, but the virus is always going to be more dangerous than the actual vaccine. Always going to be. And last thing, think about seatbelts. Seatbelts reduce the risk of you dying. You do not stop wearing seatbelts just because you heard that somebody died in a car accident with their seatbelt on.
No wiser words could have been said. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Turner, for joining us. And I certainly hope everyone who's watching us today takes heed of your warning and your advice. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So next, I want to bring in our incredible panel. Joining us tonight is Kelly Betha of JD Communications, communication strategist, and Michael Imhotep of the African History Network, along with Adrian Ermer, a fellow with the New Leaders Council Chicago. As they come in, let's go ahead and begin to talk about our next story, because the SCOTUS was very busy today, okay? The Supreme Court of the United States overturns the eviction ban. Millions of people may soon be without a home. The Supreme Court overrides the housing eviction ban, and the highest court said that the CDC exceeded its authority with the eviction moratorium. The decision puts millions of Americans at risk for homelessness due to job loss and income reduction from the pandemic. The Supreme Court asserts it's Congress's job to authorize a federal eviction moratorium. Let's go to our panel. Kelly, when you hear about what the Supreme Court has just come down with, in essence, kicking out potentially millions of people to the streets, eradicating Biden's sort of protections against evictions, what do you think happens next to those people who are still sort of hanging on by a string in an economy that's still impacted by the pandemic?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. DeWeaver, for having me. My last name is pronounced Bethia, and JD is the law degree title. So I just wanted to be clear about that. It's fine. But to answer your question, how do I feel about it? It is incredibly disheartening and disappointing that it has come to this, right? Frankly, this shouldn't even be a Supreme Court issue because like the Supreme Court said, even though I don't necessarily agree, they wanted Congress to fix this. And the reality is Congress could have fixed it. Their job is to create laws. Their job is to legislate. And for them to produce some type of legislation for the president to sign so it doesn't have to be interpreted by the Supreme Court. And frankly, Congress had enough time on this issue. Congress can speed anything up that they want to. They can slow down anything that they want to. And the fact that they appear to not have housing as a priority in the middle of a pandemic, knowing that this moratorium was in place, is just incredibly disappointing. And granted, the Senate is split 50-50. Congress on the representative side, it's majority Democrat. So in reality, we have the Democrats to blame for this because they have the power in both houses right now if it's used wisely, and it feels like they're lollygagging on the issues that are most immediate and most important to the people in this country. I get that every policy initiative has its own importance and urgency, but I can't think of something more important outside of public health. In fact, housing more or less kind of includes public health, but I can't think of a more immediate than housing. Where are you going to live? And the fact that Congress dropped the ball on this when, frankly, we worked so hard to keep a majority as Democrats, again, it's disappointing.
I hear exactly what you're saying, Kelly. Michael, I'd love to get your perspective on this, particularly given the fact that though the numbers are in the way that Kelly mentioned, and the actual implications of how politics is played, things can be a little bit more complicated than just the numbers, right? I mean, a couple of things have happened. A lot has happened in a short amount of time since the Biden administration has been in office. We just went through with the infrastructure bill. We had all this aid that had to come through in terms of rolling the vaccine out. We have still battles going on with regards to the Justice and Policing Act and the Voting Rights Act, which still have yet to get across the finish line. Not to mention the fact that you have all of these quote unquote moderate Democrats who do not want to play nicely in the sandbox with the other Democrats. Is it really as cut and dry as having a 50-50 Senate plus a vice president to get something like this through?
No, because first of all, let's just back up for a quick minute. Hopefully you can hear me okay, Avis. And you're doing a great job, by the way, Avis, also.
Thank you, dear.
If we step back, it was Representative Maxine Waters who last month, at the last minute, tried to get this bill passed in the House of Representatives for the eviction moratorium, to get it passed through Congress before the House went on summer recess. Now, the Biden administration let Congress know at the last minute that he wasn't going to extend the eviction moratorium, even though previously he said he wasn't going to extend it. But it was they got the message at the last minute. OK, so they couldn't pass it in the House. There were 10 Democrats in the House who weren't going along to pass the eviction moratorium in the House of Representatives. No Republicans were supporting it, by the way. No Republicans were trying to help. In the Senate, for the eviction moratorium to pass the Senate, if I'm correct, you need 60 votes in the Senate. I don't think this qualifies for the budget reconciliation process, where you need 50 votes plus Vice President Kamala Harris. So you need 60 in the Senate. Okay, which means you need 10 Republicans. I don't know 10 Republicans that are going to sign on for this when you didn't have 10 Republicans who signed on for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that included $46.5 billion in rental assistance for renters as well as landlords. So I don't know. I don't think there are 10 Republicans in the Senate. So it's complicated, but they should not have waited to the last minute to try to pass this in the House of Representatives, okay? Then we see Representative Cori Bush took it upon herself, who has been homeless in the past. She launched this campaign and sat on the steps of the U.S. Capitol. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You had other Democrats who, Ayanna Pressley, other Democrats. I ain't see any Republicans out there supporting this, okay? So it's complicated, but they should not have waited to the last minute. But at the same time, I don't see any Republicans trying to help. And there's going to be some white Republicans who voted to put Republicans in office who are going to be evicted also. Okay. Yep. And lastly, it's about 90% of the $46.5 billion has not been used yet either. OK. Now, the way that it was put into the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, it left it up to the states to come up with how they disseminate it. OK. And it's been a catastrophe there. But it's complicated, but at the same time, they should not have waited till the last minute, because everybody knew when the deadline was. Everybody knew when the eviction moratorium was going to expire.
Absolutely. It's not like this is something that popped up
exactly.
at the last minute.
We all had the same calendar. We all had the same calendar. We all knew when it was going to expire.
Exactly. The problem is we don't all have the same priorities. Wouldn't you agree, Adrian? It seems to me that if there's one thing that is consistent in this country, it is this issue of really providing help to people who are at the most dire circumstances. That always seems to get the short end of the stick in terms of priorities. You know, what can we do now at this point, now that it seems like we're back at square one, to sort of mitigate some of the damage that the Supreme Court decision is going to do?
Yeah, I think that there's a very clear priorities misalignment here between actual proven human need and what elected officials who are ostensibly there to represent the needs of the people, are actually trying to do and actually doing and showing us with their actions in Washington, D.C. I think that the states who have leadership that understand the direness of this situation, literally 7 million human beings potentially out on the streets, they will step in and institute statewide moratoria on evictions, and that's what's happened here in Illinois. Governor Pritzker has extended that through September, but not every jurisdiction has a governor in place who puts people over profit in a global pandemic, right? So what we're going to see in the South and in states like Texas and Georgia, Mississippi, like, this is going to be bad.
Mm-mm. It is, and the problem is that once people get out there and they are in dire circumstances, it's really hard to put that genie back in the bottle, unfortunately. Still to come on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Tomorrow marks the 53rd anniversary of the March on Washington. Have things really changed since then? We'll talk to one of the attendees of the 1963 march. Plus, the Texas House passes the massive voting legislation that we remember those Democrats fought so hard against. And the identity of the Capitol Police officer who killed the January 6th rioter who has been identified. We'll hear what he has to say about what he saw and what he's had to deal with since that day. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Stay with us.
Seek.com, we're partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
Bon Jovi, and you're watching us on Seek. What's going on? This Quavo Huncho. Right now you in the Huncho's world. Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company. We certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spio is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com, use the promo code RMVIP21.
People our age have lost the ability to focus the discipline on the art of organizing.
The challenges, there's so many of them and they're complex. And we need to be moving to address them. But I'm able to say, watch out, Tiffany. I know this road.
That is so freaking dope.
Football bans, and one of the best fan experiences in the country. The Cricket BX SWAC Challenge kickoff returns to Atlanta on August 28th, along with special guest, College Game Day. Then Alcorn State takes on North Carolina Central with conference bragging rights on the line. Center Park Stadium is the place to be on August 28th. Come tailgate all day before enjoying a primetime matchup on the gridiron. You don't want to miss this. Check out MEACSWACChallenge.com for more information.
Floyd's death hopefully put another nail in the coffin of racism.
You talk about awakening America. It led to a historic summer of protest.
I hope our younger generation don't ever forget that nonviolence is soul force.
Priceless.
I'm Chrisette Michelle.
Hi, I'm Chaley Rose, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
So we're going to bring back in our panel. Unfortunately, with technical difficulties, we're unable to bring in our participant in the 1963 march, but let's talk about just amongst ourselves, just as good friends, around how much of a improvement or change at all that we have seen between now and the original march 53 years ago, and exactly how far we need to go moving forward. If we can bring back in the panel, let's talk about this anniversary march that's coming up this weekend. You know, what do you think is the sort of the biggest achievement you can think of that we can point to with regards to where we are now versus a little bit over half a century ago? And where would you think are maybe places where you would hope we would be by now, but you see that we're still struggling? So, Kelly, let's start with you.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Michael. No, it's fine. We've come a long way. Just objectively speaking, we've come a long way. Jim Crow as legislation is not, it does not exist in the way that it did in the 60s. Segregation does not exist the way that it did in the 60s. Overall race relations has by and large improved since the 60s. But that being said, it's not like the problems went away. If anything, they have evolved into more dynamic issues. So when you do integrate races in a country that is historically racist, there's going to be problems that arise. You're going to have more covert racism so that you can bypass the blatant racism that was happening during the time of the march. You're going to have just different dynamics. So, for example, what we're dealing with right now when it comes to COVID, like Black people are still, dying at a higher rate than our white counterparts in this pandemic. That has a lot to do with systemic racism. This housing crisis that we are having and about to have with this moratorium being lifted, that's going to affect Black people a lot more harshly than our white counterparts because of systemic racism. So it's not, I don't want to say that it's gotten worse because objectively speaking, it hasn't. But with the March on Washington and the acts that came as a result, voting rights, all of those initiatives that came down the pipe, a lot of the strongest pillars of those acts have been dismantled over the years. But at the same time, things have gotten a little bit better. When it comes to progress, there's always going to be a double-edged sword. So I don't want to say it's gotten worse. It has definitely gotten different.
Absolutely. You got that right. It's gotten different. It's not that we've completely overcome, but we're fighting different battles. And it was also a good guess that I should have maybe gone to Mike, the historian on the panel. Okay.
I was like, don't give me. Curious to hear your take, but I've got some sense to drop on that.
We can hear everybody I know. Absolutely. But Mike, I would especially love to hear your thoughts on this. And when I think about for me, when I think about all that we fought for and all the blood that was spilt for voting rights, and to see all that's happening right now to pull us back to the Jim Crow era, what does that make you think as a historian with regards to where we come from, but still where we are now?
Jim Crow and Jane Crow had children, and we don't understand how to protect gains. And this is the Mississippi State Convention of 1890 all over again, where they convened and they said, we are here to exclude the Negro. And the man that presided over the Mississippi State Convention of 1890, where they voted on the Mississippi State Constitution that implemented poll taxes and literacy tests in a state at the time that was majority African-American. His name was Solomon Saladin Calhoun. And he said, let's just tell the truth about why we're here. We're here to exclude the Negro. Because African Americans were voting. We voted during Reconstruction. We voted approximately 2,000 African American men into elected office. Mississippi in 1870 saw its first and only U.S. Senator, Hiram Rhodes Revels, who became U.S. Senator in 1870, African-American man. So we saw these attacks. We saw in 1871, during Reconstruction, President Ulysses S. Grant had to use the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 to impose martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina to crack down on the Klan and white domestic terrorists that were attacking elected officials, attacking African-American elected officials. South Carolina, the majority of the state legislature in South Carolina during Reconstruction were African-Americans. So what we see here now, what just took place in Texas, and in the Texas State Constitution of 1876, they had a clause called purity of the ballot box. And when you study the history of Texas, Texas came into the Union in 1845 as a slave-holding state, and they still have a white supremacy mentality in Texas. This is all, see, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism has nothing to do with not liking people or calling people racial epithets. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, jobs, etc., and they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. What we have to understand is that things are not a constant. We have to understand the concept of protecting gains. There's always somebody trying to take away what you have because they see your advancement as something being taken away from them. Okay, you know, there's an old saying that equality, you know, when you've always had privilege, equality feels like oppression. All right. So lastly, with this 58th anniversary, we have to. It ain't just celebrating what happened in '63. We're under attack right now. So we have to understand how the power of the vote and why, going back to the census that just took the census results, and white people have a negative birth rate, okay? And they're trying to maintain power, especially white Republicans trying to maintain power. So all this is connected. So we have to understand how to protect gains as well.
You know, what I love about what you just said is when you're talking about understanding how to protect gains, and you mentioned the word power, to me, that's what that looks like. Really understanding how to will power so that when we do have advancements, we can do a better job of protecting it. Maybe it is the nature of advancements that it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or maybe it's just that we have come to accept that to be the reality. What do you think, maybe, Adrian, that we can do to be more effective in the use of wielding our power, not only to make advances, but protect advances that we make after we've achieved them?
You know, that's a great question, because if we could suss out the answer to that right here and now today, we would have successfully created a blueprint to fix America, right? And as much as I would love to do that right here and now, I'm aware that we are humans, we're limited in our capabilities, we are imperfect, and we're also operating within a system fundamentally set up to keep us from achieving that goal. So, you know, what we can start to do is chip away at the losses that we've seen over the past few years, specifically with Section 4 and 5 of the Voting Rights Act. You know, the Supreme Court took away the ability to identify the bad actors as it relates to voter suppression. So they said, oh, no, you got to renew that. Last time I checked, the jurisdictions who've been trying to keep Black people from voting are still the same jurisdictions today who are trying to keep Black people from voting. So that list of bad actors hasn't substantially changed since 1963. So if we're operating under that reality and that full factual understanding, you know, we need that back. We need those teeth back in the Voting Rights Act. And so, you know, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act is a good step in that direction. The For the People Act is a really big step in that direction, which has an additional component of addressing campaign finance reform and gerrymandering. Two things that have been among the strongest undoers of democracy in the United States of America. You know, corporate dollars speak louder than human beings casting a ballot in the voting box, and that is fundamentally flawed. Our framers didn't have that in mind. To borrow language from that side.
But corporations are people, right?
Well, that's the 14th Amendment. That's because of the 14th Amendment, because of legal fiction and corporate personhood. The same rights that humans have, citizens have in the 14th Amendment, have been given to corporations as well. Corporations are a person. When you look at the legal definition of a person in like a legal dictionary. So, yeah, this is why we have to understand the law also. Okay. Yeah. And politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. This is why, and I talk about political self-defense, we need to understand the law better than they understand the law, because everything they do to us, they use the law to do it. Then when they get caught breaking the law, they go get an attorney at law to defend them in the court of law. So we need to understand the law better than they understand the law.
I hear you, my man. Talking about law.
Level, we don't have to be legal scholars. We just need to be able to pinpoint our rights and say, no, you're not going to, not today, Satan, not today. Basically, what we need to be prepared to do and say.
I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of laws, unfortunately, we've had another law spawned from Satan that just was passed. The Texas Republicans passed the controversial voting bill after months of protests by Democrats, Texas Democrats especially. Those Democrats did their best job to stop the vote before even their 38-day walkout, but did little to keep the bill from passing in the House. In a heated debate, legislators argued whether the bill was considered racist, even though the word racism was barred from the floor by Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan for the sake of a quote unquote fair vote. Texas is now back in line to become the latest big Republican state to pass tighter voting laws in response to former President Donald Trump's lie regarding the 2020 campaign election, arguing that it was stolen. Okay, so panel, Kelly, let's start with you. Talking about hell spawn laws, here goes another one. I mean, what in the world is going on in Texas?
I mean, when you find out, let me know. Texas is just a different breed of animal. But none of this surprises me. Like, we're talking about the state I believe the governor, fully vaccinated, contracted COVID, and is still for, mask ban mandates, even though his state is, basically becoming a hotspot for COVID. This is the same state in which the Democrats basically had to flee their homes and then come back to do their jobs because the Republicans were running amok. Same state that arrested a Black woman legislator just because she wanted to open the door and see what her governor was doing, because she wasn't invited, even though legislators were allowed in the building. Again, Texas is a racist state. Legislatively speaking, the people of Texas, depending on where you are, it is clear that if not for the corruption and Jim Crow 2.0, it would be a purple state at the very least. But because of what is going on down there, it is red. So anything that happens right now, again, it doesn't surprise me. It's incredibly disappointing, but it's also expected coming from a state that is rooted that deeply in racism and, frankly, the Confederacy.
Well, we have a little clip from Texas. Let's run that, and then we'll come back and gauge the reactions of the rest of the panel.
Members, this is a reminder to everyone to be civil and respectful of our colleagues as we debate SB 1. The chair would appreciate members not using the word racism this afternoon.
Intentional discrimination against people of a certain race, is that racism?
That is.
Ms. Hinojosa.
Those words, intentional discrimination, I think can be fairly characterized in that manner.
We can talk about racial impacts of this legislation without accusing members of this body of being racist.
Respectfully, I'm not accusing members of this body. I'm talking about
members' outbursts are inappropriate.
So, Michael, we can talk about how the racist impact of this law is and how it can, by definition, technically that might be racism, but God forbid you call us racist. Oh my God, let me clutch to my pearls.
That's what you call a hit dog hollering. That's what you call a hit dog hollering. That's what that is. They know they're white supremacists. They know they're racist. They know these white Republicans are trying to maintain power in a state that was Mexican territory. Okay? They understand they're losing power. They understand that also white people in this country have a negative birth rate. So they're using laws. Now, we have to understand this is all predicated by the big lie. And you got 400 bills being pushed by Republicans in about 49 state legislatures, all predicated on the big lie that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. Yet when asked, okay, show me evidence of mass election fraud, widespread election fraud in Texas, they can't show it to you because it doesn't exist. Once again, they're trying to suppress the votes of African Americans, Hispanics, et cetera. Now, what's missing from this equation is corporate America. Why is corporate America so silent? Why do they have laryngitis? In summer 2020, when you had the George Floyd protests taking place and Black Lives Matter protests, they were pledging hundreds of millions of dollars and all this stuff and talking about we're going to do better and everything. Okay. Now, if you go back to 2015, 2016, when you had the transgender bathroom bills in Indiana and North Carolina, corporate America was tripping over themselves to come out, putting out statements of strong condemnation. And they were talking about canceling contracts in the state of Indiana, canceling conferences and all different types of things like this. Corporate America came out and put so much pressure on the state of Indiana that the state legislature within 1 week had to change the bill because the threat of losing money. Well, why is corporate America so silent here? Okay, so if you speak up for LGBTQ, you need to speak up for BLACK. At the same time, this is bigger than just black. This is a 15th Amendment issue. This is a 19th Amendment issue, and it's a 26th Amendment issue because the 26th Amendment of 1971 lowered the minimum voting age from 21 to 18. 19th Amendment gave the right to vote to white women, and then it was expanded to African-American women. So what people like Reverend William Barber III and others, they're expanding this beyond just African-Americans. If this just remains a black issue, we're going to lose.
Oh, my goodness. Adrian, I mean, what are your thoughts about that in terms of the craziness that's going on in Texas and the solution? Is the solution to have maybe a more universal approach to attacking this issue, increased coalition building? What is the solution here?
I definitely think coalition building is always a key or an ingredient to success when you're talking about moving the legislative needle. So that's always on the table, and that's always something that is accessible to us, should we be willing to put in the work to build authentic coalitions. I do agree in that corporate America has a role to play here, and they've stepped up and they've taken action in situations related to race and race relations, particularly when Colin Kaepernick was taking a knee. They made statements for certain states, and they were threatening to leave Georgia. The film industry was threatening to leave Georgia over their policing situation. So if I'm remembering that correctly, I might need to go back and double check, but they're not doing enough here on this issue. And that for me is telling, because essentially their well-being is also wrapped up in this debate. Does an informed electorate, does a well-participating electorate mean good news for them in the long run, where policy is skewing more socially progressive? Where do they shake out in 10 years in this debate if they get in on the action to protect voting rights, right? So I don't think that their calculus is one of race. I think their calculus is one of relevancy.
Wow. Are they relevant at all? Well, not to pick on Texas, but we have one more Texas story I want to bring up for you guys while we're all here picking on Texas. Sorry, Roland. In Texas, two black men, because that's his home, sued Walmart for racial discrimination. Okay. Dennis Stewart and Terrence Richardson claim Walmart caused them mental and physical distress after they were handcuffed and questioned when attempting to, get this, you guys, return a $300 television. A store associate called the police on the men, accusing them of stealing the television and not taking their receipt as proof. Police eventually released the men. Stewart and Richardson called the experience dehumanizing and are suing the billion-dollar corporation for racial discrimination, false arrest and imprisonment, and breach of contract. Damn, we can't even return stuff anymore. Thoughts about that, Kelly?
Texas is going to Texas. That is more or less my point. Between Texas and Florida, I don't know which one is worse. I really don't. Florida has Florida Man, as far as, you know, folklore of the ridiculousness, but Texas is really its own breed of dumb racism, because first of all, there's no logic to racism, really. But for them to not even use just, I don't even want to say common sense, but a gift of discernment and, you know, just checking bias out the door. Just simple customer service could have avoided this issue. But if you don't see a Black person as a customer, when you see our skin as a weapon and a threat in anything other than human, stuff like this is going to happen, not just in Texas, but anywhere. But the fact that it's Texas, I mean, again, like I said in the previous segment, it is disappointing, but it's expected.
Well, you know, we've had driving while black, we've had sort of sleeping while black in your own bed. Now we have like just trying to return a TV to the television while black. Good Lord, Michael, what can we do without being unduly harassed, not even by police, but just by lay people who happen to be working at a store and think that they are apparently the be all end all with regards to policing our bodies?
Yeah, you know, in this situation here, if I was a customer, I would have called the police myself in this situation here. So I don't know, in reading this story here from BusinessInsider.com and having been in retail management before and dealt with theft and things like this, it doesn't appear that the men, the two African-American men, were doing anything wrong. The associate was white. Okay. Now, if they presented a receipt trying to return a $300 TV, all right, there's a way to verify whether the receipt is valid or not. It's in your system. It's in your Walmart system, regardless of which store they buy it from. You can verify. Also, on the receipt is a code that tells you which store it was purchased from. So if for some reason it doesn't come up in your system, you can call that store to verify the return. So it seems like I don't know if they have ever returned anything to this particular Walmart store before or not. All right, I don't know because I don't have those details. But it appears that it's something racial. But then when you look at what the associate said to them, he said, "Take this effing receipt, take that effing TV, get the F out this store, and never effing come back." What type of customer service training did you go through at Walmart?
Exactly.
You know, so this is something on a whole nother level. Okay, so they should get everything that's coming to them, but then also there has to be their whole customer service training and cultural sensitivity, all that has to be looked at as well. Okay, and your hiring process. Where'd you get this associate from that would talk to a customer like that?
Yeah,
you know, that doesn't make any sense. If I had an employee like that, I would fire them on the spot. Period. I'll deal with human resources later. Your behind got to go.
Indeed. Your thoughts, Adrian?
Yeah, you know, speaking of receipts, I think there are some receipts that are yet to come out related to what happened leading up to that point. And to your point, Michael, this is a customer training piece. This is a not seeing red flags in somebody that you've hired. This is probably this person has had multiple complaints and nothing has happened sort of situation. And I think more and more will start to come out to that effect. putting Walmart in a greater degree of culpability here. So I'm really interested to see how this unfolds, because I do think corporations need to be held accountable for their franchises and the people that they hire.
That they do. Now, we have more to talk about when we come back after the next break on Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Seek.com. We are partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
And you're watching us on Seek.
What's going on? This Quavo Huncho. Right now you in the Huncho's world. Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21.
People our age have lost the ability to focus the discipline on the art of organizing.
The challenges, there's so many of them and they're complex. And we need to be moving to address them. But I'm able to say, watch out, Tiffany. I know this road.
That is so freaking dope.
Football bans and one of the best fan experiences in the country. The Cricket BX SWAC Challenge kickoff returns to Atlanta on August 28th, along with special guests, College Game Day. Then Alcorn State takes on North Carolina Central with conference bragging rights on the line. Center Park Stadium is the place to be on August 28th. Come tailgate all day before enjoying a primetime matchup on the gridiron. You don't want to miss this. Check out MEACSWACChallenge.com for more information.
You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.
Hurting black folk.
Right.
We got to deal with it. It's injustice. It's wrong.
I do feel like in this generation, we've got to do more around being intentional in resolving conflict.
You and I have always agreed.
Yeah.
But we agree on the big piece.
Yeah.
Our conflict is not about destruction.
Conflict's going to happen.
Hey, I'm Deion Cole from Blackish.
Hey everybody, this is your man Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
The man who shot and killed one of the Capitol insurrectionists is speaking out. Lieutenant Michael Byrd is the Capitol Police officer who killed rioter and Trump supporter Ashley Babbitt on January 6th. During an NBC News exclusive interview with Lester Holt, Byrd explains what happened the day rioters stormed the nation's capital and threatens he's endured since.
They talked about, killing me, cutting off my head, very vicious and cruel things.
Racist things?
There were some racist attacks as well. It's all disheartening because I know I was doing my job.
Given the nature of the threats that you describe, do you have any concern about showing your face and identifying yourself?
Of course I do. That is a very vital point, and it's something that It's frightening. I believe I showed the utmost courage on January 6th, and it's time for me to do that now.
Were you afraid that day?
I was very afraid.
What are you hearing on your radio?
I'm hearing about the breaches of different barricaded areas, officers being overrun, officers being down.
Did you ever hear a call or a report of shots fired during any of this?
As a matter of fact, I did. There was reports of shots fired through the house main door onto the floor of the chamber.
Defense.
I had been yelling and screaming as loud as I was, please stop, get back, stop. We had our weapons drawn. I was taking a tactical stance. You're ultimately hoping that your commands will be complied with, and unfortunately they were not.
So I have to say, I saw that interview yesterday and I was riveted, but I was also, I want to be honest with you, scared for him. Here he is, unmasking himself as a Black man. We know a huge contingent of those individuals who stormed into the building on January 6th and attempted that coup were, in fact, white supremacists. We know now, even after this, and I guess unsurprisingly, after he has become public, he has received a barrage of additional threats, even more, and racist rhetoric targeting him. When I think about what he has done and put his life on the line, and I think about all the history of Black people throughout the history of this nation fighting for this nation, and what do you get for it? You get threatened. You get put in situations like he's in right now, where people are questioning whether or not he should have killed someone who clearly was attempting to commit a violent act. Adrian, when you look at the bravery of a Lieutenant Byrd, not only in terms of his actions on that day, which no doubt saved lives, it saved lives. If that woman would have gotten through, the rest of them would have gotten through. Let's just be real about that. I don't care that she didn't have a gun. She would have been the first one of literally hundreds who would have overrun the House floor. Okay, he saved lives. But what does he get as a result? You get the former president targeting him. You get people in these white supremacist spaces really trying to figure out how in the world can they intimidate him, how can they give him death threats, and potentially how can they actually get to him. What are your thoughts, Adrian, about the example of the bravery of a Lieutenant Byrd and all the history of Black people doing over and above the call of duty to protect this nation, only to be put in situations where our lives are in danger as a result of us doing our own civic duty?
I think that interview was heartbreaking for me to watch, not simply from a place of fear for his safety, his family's safety, but like when he got to the point in that interview when he said, I am a Capitol Police officer. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, Black or white. It's my job to protect the people in this building. Like, that hit me so hard, especially to see him cry, tear up, like that. It's emblematic of sort of this, his ingrained patriotism and Americanness. He holds that to be true, to be self-evident. He lives that identity. He breathes that identity every day for work. But we look outside and our patriotism is constantly under attack and under question, and our Americanness is constantly under attack and under question. And the rights that we are ordained as Americans are questioned and under attack in our daily existence. Like that interview encapsulated all of that for me. And it's, where do we go from here? I have no idea. We can't, you can't even think to put this man in witness protection because the areas where witness protection is are rural America. He won't be safe in those kinds of environments. So it's like now it's I guess the onus is on us, on his community and his village, to step up and do our part to protect this man. Like, I don't know. It really left me in a place of devastation, fear, and sadness. It really did.
Absolutely. And Michael, thoughts about this horrible situation that Lieutenant Byrd finds himself in? And then when we think about that juxtaposed against the idea that supposedly these very same people who are threatening his life, who are questioning his decisions on that day that clearly saved lives, are the very same people who, you know, a few months ago was talking about Blue Lives Matter this and Blue Lives Matter that. I mean, I could get whiplash from the hypocrisy. You know, what are your thoughts about this type of sort of, rank hypocrisy and no real sort of merits in terms of morality around where one stands on this issue, but instead it seems like everything, at least from the Republican side of the aisle, is all based around fealty to one criminal former president?
Well, Republicans backed the blue until the coup. That's what happened. See, they backed the blue until the coup. These are white domestic terrorists. The Republican Party is, as my friend Dr. Greg Carr says, they are the white nationalist party. This is what they are. This goes to the fear of the browning of America that Donald Trump tapped into in 2015 and 2016 when he ran. And you have these white domestic terrorists who can't believe that Trump lost the election. And, you know, as I said before, Ashley Babbitt should have complied. She should have complied with the police, because that's what they tell us when we get shot. We should have complied. She should have complied. He gave her warnings. OK, now she was radicalized. She was radicalized. She was a QAnon supporter. She was radicalized by these white domestic terrorists, QAnon, and Donald Trump. She was a Donald Trump follower, like many of these other people there. And they're so stupid. They don't even understand the difference between the White House and the U.S. Capitol building. Because there was one of these idiots who's sitting in jail right now. There's one of these idiots who's sitting in jail right now who went to the Capitol and he said, the president sent us here. OK, the president invited us. That's not the president's house, you idiot. He has no authority over the U.S. Capitol building. All right. They don't even understand the difference between the executive branch of government and the legislative branch of government. So, but this is what happens when you have a conspiracy theorist, a white supremacist, or white nationalist who is in the position of Trump, and he radicalizes people. So, there's so much going on right here. But at the foundation also is a lack of understanding of history of this country. This is why America must have a massive history lesson. And also Americans don't understand the U.S. Constitution as well. OK, so we have to have a massive history lesson and understanding the Constitution, history of this country. But also we have to understand we got to protect ourselves from idiots like this. And we got to make sure these Trump supporters in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate and the 147 Republicans in the House voted not to certify the 2020 presidential election. We got to make sure we vote those traitors out of office also. Because if they come back into power in the House and the Senate, they're going to do us harm. They're already trying to block anything that's beneficial to African Americans. So we got to make sure we fire them and vote them out of office also.
Absolutely. Now, you raise a point that I think is so important to highlight, underscore, circle, underline, everything that we can possibly do. These are terrorists. These are
absolutely
terrorists. And every analysis that I've seen around terrorism in this nation suggests that domestic terrorists, primarily white, male, domestic terrorists, are the biggest threat to us in this nation. They are the most violent ilk in this nation. And it's really interesting to me, the degree to which it seems in many ways this country sort of bends over backwards to be light on them. And, every time I see the footage that we just showed a second ago with all the violent actions that were going on, and then I think fast forward a few hours and they were being escorted out of the damn building. Now, months later, people are still trying to find these folks. It just really, it angers me to no end. Kelly, when you think about where we are right now with regards to the radicalization, literally of millions of people, what can we do to protect not only democracy, but quite frankly, us as individuals in this country? They are a danger to all of us.
I'm sorry, that stage talking to me. Can you repeat the question? I apologize.
Sure. No worries. Now, I was just pointing out the fact that these are radicalized domestic terrorists that present a danger not only to democracy in the way that they tried to overthrow an election on January 6th. When you look at the fact that under the Trump administration, we saw a record growth in hate groups in America. We had the highest number of hate groups ever in America. We had a huge spike in hate crimes in America. We have the propagandizing of this hate-filled ideology that's infused our culture. And it's also sort of tied into the anti-vaxxing and everything. It's all part of that same ilk. The QAnon, all of that is part of the same ilk. They represent a clear and present danger, not just to this democracy, but to us as individuals, and particularly as Black people, okay? Just thoughts about what we should do and can do to protect ourselves from this rising threat in America, when it seems as if the system is not that pressed to really throw the book at them in the way that they should.
Well, that's a very layered question. My most immediate thought when it comes to what can we do, there are groups out there that are Black, I don't want to say Black owned, but predominantly Black groups similar to the NRA, but specifically for African Americans. So learn about your Second Amendment rights, learn about basically your Bill of Rights, like the first 10 amendments, like look through those, study those, and know what your rights are should you be approached by police or racist or anyone who is trying to infringe upon your rights. I would just reiterate the fact that, like everyone said on this panel, she was a terrorist, yes, but more importantly, she was a traitor. So like with terrorism, people think foreign. People think outside of this country, coming into this country and attacking this country. But it's more than that. On January 6th, these were Americans who betrayed the Constitution. These were Americans who betrayed the country. That's beyond terrorism to me. That is a traitor. So we don't negotiate with terrorists, but we sure as hell don't negotiate with a traitor. So I think reframing our mindset, not just Black people, but everyone, every American, to reframe our mindset regarding what happened on January 6th, they betrayed us. They didn't, just go in there just to attack Democrats or whatever. They had the mission to overthrow the government in which we follow, which is it's followed by the country. So it's beyond just terrorism and dismantling and creating chaos. You wanted to overthrow a government. You wanted to betray your country. So when we go back to the officer who was interviewed, like everyone on this panel, my heart breaks for him, but it hits closer to home because I live in DC now, and January 6th was scary for anyone who lived in DC. I heard the ambulances going by. I heard the helicopters flying overhead. So for people who do not understand or want to forget that day or want to act like that day did not exist, it's beyond terrorism for me. You are a traitor to this country if you think along those lines. And the government should, govern themselves accordingly regarding this sect of people. I would say throw them in Gitmo, frankly, if you want to know my thoughts on it. Because if you don't want to abide by the Constitution, then you don't want to be an American. And you need to be treated as someone who is not American. Like, what do we do with those people? We put them in jail and throw away the key.
To dovetail off of your comments, Kelly, and can you hear me? Oh, yeah, to dovetail off of your comments buddy of mine who's former military laid something out for me that I thought was very enlightening, that the messaging tactics, the recruitment tactics, the picking and choosing of biblical word tactics of the alt-right and the QAnon movement is not dissimilar from Al-Qaeda and ISIS. From a tactical and a military standpoint. So for me, if a former military person, not a ranking member, can point this similarity out, why is it so hard for our own government to do that and act accordingly and proceed accordingly with these folks as terrorists? Because that's what they are. You know, and Kelly, you said they need to be in Gitmo. I honestly thought that's where the folks that they detained were going at when this happened.
I thought so too. I was like, what do you mean federal court?
You know,
Well,
this is where
many of them went back to their mama's house afterwards, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Part of the problem here is that part of the problem here is that Congress has to pass domestic terrorist laws. See, you have laws dealing with international terrorists, foreign terrorists coming to this country, but there's a lack of laws dealing with domestic terrorism. Okay, and Congress has to pass laws dealing with domestic terrorism. Now, I don't know if you're gonna get 10 Republicans in the Senate and the 117th Congress to vote for that, but that's part of the problem. But also, lastly, there's about 600 people who've been charged in the January 6th insurrection. The few cases that we've seen so far are not the most egregious cases. Okay, so I just want people to understand that these are low level people who, there was one who's charged with a felony, but he wasn't charged like with a violent felony. He didn't beat up anybody, he didn't threaten anybody, things like this. So the cases we've seen so far are low level cases. These ain't the most egregious people. These ain't the people who were beating up police officers. These ain't the people that were, things like that. They haven't gotten to those cases yet.
Yeah. Well, right. I will say that I think it's a good point that there needs to be some domestic terrorist laws passed. My concern is that, honestly, domestic terrorism was not invented January 6th. Black people have seen domestic terrorism since the moment we were brought to these shores. And I think the reason why there aren't laws defining it is because we see who the main perpetrators are. And therefore, it is implicitly allowed. That's my thoughts on it. But there is another way in which a number of these folks are are actually, in fact, specifically the Capitol Police officers are trying to fight back. Some of them are actually suing Donald Trump. Donald Trump is facing a lawsuit for his role in the January 6th insurrection. 7 Capitol Police officers are suing the former president, Stop the Steal rally organizers, and members of far-right extremist groups. According to the lawsuit, the officers say they were assaulted, spat on, tear-gassed, bear sprayed, they probably would have liked that, subjected to racial slurs, and feared for their lives. They say the defendants spread false claims of election fraud and incited violence against the officers meant to protect them. More than 140 officers were injured, and over 600 people are facing criminal charges for their alleged roles in the riot. Sometimes money talks, and you know what else walks. I mean, do you think this idea of actually having some potentially financial accountability is really what's needed to get to the bottom of this? Mike, we'll start with you.
I think any.
I'm sorry. Go right.
That's part of. Now they should file. They should file this lawsuit, and it's going to be more people joining in this lawsuit. I know Eric Swalwell has already filed one, and there's been he's a member of the House of Representatives, Democrat from the House of Representatives, and I know that some others have joined in that as well. So this is what they can do on in the civil court, okay? And they should absolutely do this. And I think this is a civil lawsuit, if I remember correctly. This is seeking monetary damages. And with this one, Avis, were they using as the foundation the 1871 Ku Klux Klan Act? I think it was that was part of this lawsuit, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they should definitely do that. And that's what you can do on this end. And you're dealing with, this also deals with not just the lie of not just the big lie, but also radicalizing and inciting an insurrection. They were radicalized over a course of months, okay? And Fox News and Newsmax and all of this. It wasn't just Trump on Twitter. It was a whole network, Parler. It was a whole network of them using social media and cable news, et cetera. So yeah, so this is a start here. I think they should definitely hit this from different angles.
You know, what's really interesting to me, you're exactly right. This is the outgrowth of months of radicalization. And what's really interesting to me is that one would have thought in a sane world that after this happened, you know, you'd have people say, maybe we went a tad too far. But instead, what happened is you have a continuation, I would argue, of the radicalization, but now they're bending it back towards targeting it at voting rights. They are still radicalizing people, spreading this lie, and now the focus is to attack our voting rights, to dovetail back on an earlier discussion this evening, as a way to maintain power in a space where they obviously know that they are losing the advantage of population. Is there any way to overcome this desire to propagandize, to radicalize, to cause massive brainwashing all across this nation, even when it results in violence, if people know that at the end of the day, they can use that evil tactic in order to hold on to power?
War. I mean, that's how the world, like Hitler was brought to heel. Like you had to go to a whole war, and the tactics and the propaganda machine that he and Mussolini employed are not all that dissimilar from what's happening here in America. So, you know, are we headed towards another civil war? I hope not, because we're in a very different time, and wars are fought in very different ways now than they were in the, you know, in the 60s and the 40s and like all, like I just, in the 1800s, like I don't want to know what that looks like from a lived experience. But honestly, from a historical perspective, the way you bring that level of fascism and violent movements to a heel is with more violence. And that's scary. That's scary.
It is scary because when you look at it, you know, it's as if, you know, it's hard to see what is happening, if anything is happening, to put a stop to it. If anything, it just seems like people are continuing to go down that road, even when they're using it around these issues, around the election. I would argue they're using the same tactics in terms of the conspiracy theories around the vaccine and all of this. It's like a train speeding out of control with regards to the level of dissemination of misinformation via propagandizing, and this issue of radicalization and the fact that it is impacting millions of people. I just don't see how we handle that and pull it back and take control of it. Is voting even enough to do that? You know, it's very hard for me to even see that when our voting rights itself are under attack based precisely on this, through this tactic.
I think that's the point. That's a really good point. Like, you know, if you take the civil means off the table, which is the ballot box, what alternatives then become left? And that's why this dynamic is so dangerous and can potentially get even more dangerous. Just my thoughts.
Got it. Kelly, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you're asking what needs to be done or what can be done. I think first and foremost, and we all know this, we have to realize that this country was rooted in racism. So what we're seeing right now isn't necessarily an uprising or anything that's necessarily new. It's just in the forefront of everyone's minds right now because that's, you know, that's what we're seeing. There's been an increase, but it's not like it came out of nowhere. And I think the first step to dismantling that is to actually, bifurcate our thoughts in that, whiteness is not inherently good. I feel like a lot of the rationale behind domestic terrorism not being legislated to the nth degree that it should be is because a lot of domestic terrorists are white. And we have the data to show that. But when you automatically equate whiteness to goodness, it's hard to govern and to reprimand the whiteness that isn't necessarily good, if that makes any sense. So we have to take away the notion or disabuse ourselves of the notion that whiteness is inherently good as a first step. And then we can actually get somewhere when it comes to white terrorists, white domestic terrorism happening in this country, actually getting the punishments that they deserve. It follows that everything else will more or less fall into place, because the model of domestic terrorism just being domestic terrorism, regardless of whether you're black or white, will actually be treated as the heinous crime that it is.
That's an excellent point, Kelly. And Mike, from a historical perspective, do you believe that really that's at the root of why there is such a backlash against critical race theory, against the 1619 Project, when we have this huge sort of argument against and organized movements against truth-telling, just basic truth-telling when it comes to history, because that history would indeed show that whiteness is not inherently good. Is that part of the problem here?
Yeah, well, one, Americans are very ignorant of history, number one. Okay. And you have one segment of the population, white people, who want the truth to be taught. A few months ago, you had teachers across the country. It was a Saturday, and they were organizing. It was speared by the Zen Education Project, and teachers were demanding legislatures from politicians, let us teach the truth. Let us teach the truth in class. Okay, we don't want restrictions on what we can teach about history. Our children need to know the truth about the history of this country. The attack on critical race theory, that most Republicans can't tell you what the hell critical race theory is. What they're just doing is just lumping in under the umbrella of critical race theory everything they don't like dealing with race and racism, systemic racism, slavery. They don't know what the hell critical race theory is. The backlash to that is that stems from the summer of 2020 in the Black Lives Matter protests, but that comes from also the executive order from Trump in September of 2020 that put a ban on critical race theory and things like this, dealing with training for federal employees, diversity training, et cetera. It's speared from that, but it's funded by right-wing dark money. Okay, is connected to the takeover of school boards, by conservatives, fueled by right-wing dark money. So all this is connected. This is why America must have a massive history lesson. And lastly, it was the 1871 Ku Klux Klan Act that the police officers are using as the basis for their federal lawsuit. Okay, and that's a Reconstruction era statute that allows individuals to sue when they are injured by conspiracies that prevent by force, intimidation, or threat any person from accepting or holding any office, trust, or place of confidence under the United States. That's the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871.
Thank you, Professor Imhotep.
I just want to make sure I'm accurate on Roland's show. Okay.
I love it, my man. I love it. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Seek.com, we are partnering with them, of course. We appreciate their support right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Check out a couple of their products that you can take advantage of.
Bon Jovi, and you're watching us on Seek.
What's going on? This Quavo Huncho, but right now you in the Huncho's world.
Please let the music play.
Enjoy the Seek.com video by using one of their virtual reality headsets. All you do is just pop your phone right here into the VR headset and enjoy the content. You can also take advantage of their 360-degree headphones. These headphones here come in a couple of colors, black and gold, but then also all gold. And so you can check these out. If you want to use our promo code to get a discount, it's RMVIP21, RMVIP21. Then, of course, a portion of the proceeds comes back to Roland Martin Unfiltered, which allows for us to fund the show. And so this is a black-owned company, and we certainly believe in supporting black-owned companies. Mary Spiel is the founder. And so, again, go to Seek.com and use the promo code RMVIP21.
You study the music, you get Black history by default. And so no other craft could carry as many words as rap music.
I try to intertwine that and make that create whatever I'm supposed to send out to the universe.
A rapper, for the longest period of time has gone through phases.
I love the word. I hate what it's become, and to this generation, the way they visualize it.
Its narrative kind of like has gotten away and spun away from, I guess, the ascension of Black people.
Football bans, and one of the best fan experiences in the country. The Cricket BX SWAC Challenge kickoff returns to Atlanta on August 28th, along with special guest, College Game Day. Then Alcorn State takes on North Carolina Central with conference bragging rights on the line. Center Park Stadium is the place to be on August 28th. Come tailgate all day before enjoying a primetime matchup on the gridiron. You don't want to miss this. Check out MEACSWACChallenge.com for more information.
Roland Martin Unfiltered, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.
Women have always been essential. So now how are you going to pay us like that?
And it's not just the salary. I mean, there are a whole number of issues that have to support us as women.
Yeah. But that's what we deserve. That we shouldn't have to beg anybody for that. And I think that we are trying to do our best as a generation to honor the fact that we didn't come here alone and we didn't come here by accident.
I always say every generation has to define for itself what it means to move the needle forward.
Hey, I'm Arnaz J. Black TV does matter, dang it.
Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy, Jacob Lattimore, and you're now watching Roland Martin right now.
Stay woke.
3 California high school students have been suspended after a video of them abusing a black doll named Shaniqua goes viral. In the video, several students from Salinas High School are seen abusing the black doll and placing the toy in sexual positions. Parents say this is not the first time an incident of this caliber has occurred in the school or the district. In a statement, the Salinas Union High School District condemned the terrible act and said in part, the SUHSD does not condone this type of behavior. And although the district has taken steps to support our African American students and staff, this recent incident demonstrates how much more support is needed. We urge families to also take time to talk with their students about the damaging effects of racist behavior. Counseling is available at all of our school sites for any students who may need support. Racism and racial injustice are in direct opposition to the district's values. Our district will continue our efforts to show that racism and racial injustice have no place in our schools. We are committed to maintaining a safe, positive school environment where all students, staff, parents, guardians, and community members are treated with respect and dignity. Members of the Salinas High School community and the general public continue to swarm social media and online platforms to express their frustration. bring back the panel to discuss this. You know, Kelly, when I saw this story and I saw the degree to which they were not only harping physical abuse on this doll, but also sexual abuse on this doll, it really made me think about the degree to which the Black body has historically been dehumanized in this country, both with regards to physical violence and sexual violence, irregardless of sex, right? So, you know, what does this tell us about the fact that we like to think that the younger generation is going to be so much less racist? But honestly, it doesn't look like it, does it?
It doesn't, but that's also evidence of racism being taught, because it's not like you're born a racist. This is evidence that at home, issues such as race and teaching your children about cultural differences and racial differences and embracing humanity as a whole, those are not discussions being talked about at the kitchen table with these white families. You're talking, when you said that, you know, it's evidence of our bodies being dehumanized. Specifically, it is evidence of Black women being hypersexualized, dehumanized, and frankly, disregarded. And the overquoted but ever so relevant quote from Malcolm X being, "The Black woman is the most disrespected in this country." I mean, that rings true here. This is disturbing on so many levels, because it's not like this was a human blow-up doll. You know what I'm saying? Not saying that that would have been any better, but the fact that this is representative of a child, and they're doing this to a doll that is representative of a Black child, that shows you just how insidious and how ingrained their racism is. And these kids, I'm sure they just saw it as a joke. You know, they see stuff on TikTok all the time. They see the lax approaches to race in their own families and in their environments. They probably didn't think this was a big deal outside of it being a joke. But that in itself is a problem, you know. And there have been plenty of studies regarding just interacting with dolls and what that says about human behavior. I mean, going so far back as Brown versus Board, the doll test regarding that. And there have been doll tests since then that have shown how we interact as humans when, you know, like how we interact in regards to how we treat the doll. So the fact that they saw this child, this Black child, and they did this to a Black child as they themselves are children. That part is more disturbing to me than the fact that they just, you know, trashed a toy. It's more insidious than that. There's layers to it.
Absolutely, there are layers to it. And before the break, Mike, we were just talking a minute ago about critical race theory. And to me, one of the more interesting arguments that I oftentimes hear from those on the right who are saying, oh my goodness, critical race theory, we don't need that in school. It's making our kids feel as if they're the bad guy. And by the way, my kid's not racist, and we're just teaching them that they're going to be racist. Hell, these kids are racist. I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and say that. Okay. Somebody needs to teach them something. I mean, what do you think this tells us about what's lacking in our school system? Because I agree with Kelly. It came from someplace. It came from home. So at some point, there needs to be an intervention. Why not have that intervention be embedded in our educational system?
Well, yeah, it should be embedded in our educational system. And just for clarification, it's important for people to understand that critical race theory is not taught in K through 12. That's a legal analysis. That's basically taught in grad schools, legal
I
schools.
took the class.
Okay. Yeah,
see, critical.
It's not.
What'd you say, Kelly?
No, I was saying I took, that's a law course. Like, I took the class.
Right, exactly. So, see, this whole fight over critical race theory is just to put under an umbrella critical race theory, thing that white conservatives don't like dealing with racist, systemic racism and slavery, okay? Now, it's important for people to understand, let me just dissect this quickly. The dehumanization of African people has always been entertainment for this country. You go back to 1828, 1829, T.D. Rice, Thomas Dartmouth Rice creates the Jim Crow character, and he puts on blackface and tattered torn clothing and adopts a Southern dialect to dehumanize and lampoon and imitate enslaved Africans. Okay, and the minstrel shows become the most popular form of entertainment in this country. You go to 1916. There's a man named Harry C. Brown who recorded a song on Columbia Records called N-Word Love a Watermelon, Ha Ha Ha. That's the name of the song. It becomes a big hit. It's on YouTube. You can listen to it. So the history of this country, the history of slavery has to be taught in every school across this country, because what we're seeing is we're seeing a dehumanization of African Americans that is replicated in media. Okay, I'm about to take it there. The only reason why R. Kelly allegedly was able to do what he did allegedly is because the majority of his alleged victims were black women and black girls. Because if he was outside of a high school, allegedly talking to 15, 16, 17-year-old white girls, that would have stopped years ago. Okay, period. He either be in prison or somewhere else. That's all there is to it. But when you have African women who are looked at as the most disrespected women in America, okay, this is how something like this is able to happen. This is the reason why you would never have any type white female stars do a song like WAP. White corporations, white record companies would not let Taylor Swift, they would not let no white woman do a song like WAP. And the bass line says there's some whores in this house. That's how they think of us. That's why they're able to do it. And if you don't believe me, all you got to do is look at the fact that there was an online petition that a bunch of white people put together to have Kylie Jenner, who's a billionaire and white, digitally removed from the video. The reason why was because they were trying to rescue her, because you only protect what you respect. You only protect what you respect. So you let those Negroes be the whores in the house. You let those Negroes do stuff like that, because that's how they think of us. Lastly, if you read the details of this doll, the doll's face was reportedly altered to give it the appearance of having abnormally big lips and a facial tattoo. Okay, so with the big lips is a stereotype, once again, of African Americans, and we saw that in the minstrel shows. We saw that in the Amos and Andy radio show, things like that. So yeah, you got to deal with this history. We have to call this out, and I want to see what type of discipline is going to happen, and how is the school district going to make sure nothing like this happens in the future either.
You know, that's an excellent point, because, you know, the school district, Adrian, put out a nice little statement that I think they hope is going to keep them out of the damn courthouse with lawsuits, okay? They put out a nice little statement. But there's nothing in the statement about what is actually going to happen to the students who were engaged in this abusive and racist behavior. They were suspended. Okay, thank you. So the students were suspended. I wonder for how long. I mean, to me, you know, I just really...
So unless it's an expulsion and it's on like somebody's collegiate record, so that they don't get into the dream school of their choice, it's pretty lax.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, I agree. What would you like to see, Adrian? What really would, because there has to be, to me, there has to be a remedy that's at least as egregious as the offense, in order for people to be disincentivized from doing something similar in the future. What would you like to see happen when we see things like this occur in school districts? Because I just feel like too often, particularly when the perpetrators are white, people are most likely to say, well, you know, kids are kids, let boys be boys, let girls be girls. And as you mentioned, Kelly, it does not follow them in the same way that the smallest little infraction ends up putting kids in courtrooms, Black kids in courtrooms with the school to prison pipeline, and they can never get out from under that stain on their record. What should happen to these types of students?
No, I think there's a couple different channels here on this, because one is the irony that the school district is going to say, oh, well, we just need more racial sensitivity and DEI training, which is essentially critical race theory. But in the same breath, oh, but we don't need that as part of our curriculum to stop this in the first place. Like that piece needs to be addressed. And I think anyone who says we don't need critical race theory like curriculum in our grade schools and in our high schools, videos like this, other videos like the ones that came out of Chicago where they were taunting and chanting racial epithets at this Marist High School here in Chicago. Like, these are the videos that need to be shown as proof evidence and proof positive that this kind of education and curriculum is desperately needed in schools, because children clearly aren't getting this curriculum or these social ideals at home. The other piece of this that I would agree with Kelly on is that there needs to be real discipline here. A suspension is basically a vacation for kids to play video games at home. And the homes that these kids are coming from are more likely to reward their behavior than punish them for it. So that's not teaching them any lesson. It's reinforcing negative behavior. So, you know, I agree. I think there needs to be some civil lawsuits filed. I think the parents of Black students need to get together and file a class action suit against the district, and that these children and their families need to be named in court documents that are FOIable. And therefore, when they go and apply for college, the colleges can say and do their due diligence, say, I don't know that we need to invite them to Harvard University because they were on Insta smashing a Black baby's face into the concrete. Like, I think that there need to be very clear repercussions for this, because suspensions alone aren't going to cut it. And the district better get their act together. That's all I got to say, because DEI training that's optional,
Nowhere near enough. Absolutely.
No, not at all.
Absolutely. So let's turn our attention to an update about Afghanistan. Hundreds trekked to the Kabul airport after the deadly suicide explosion. Afghans traveled through debris, waste, and human carnage, attempting to flee the Taliban-run Afghanistan. More than 90 people were injured, with an official number not yet completely released. But we know that we lost 13 service members in this attack, even more than that who were injured, Americans, many more Afghanis killed and injured. President Biden vows to find those responsible for the attack. Australia and New Zealand have entered their evacuation efforts in Afghanistan. President Biden is extending his August 31st deadline to ensure all Americans have been evacuated. So, going to the panel, this was never going to be an easy, swan song to this situation. However, with this attack happening, that kind of just ratchets up the challenges associated with extricating the American presence out of Afghanistan. What do you think is going to happen now? Do you think that this is ultimately going to kind of spiral us right back into the thick of things? Or do you think that this administration will continue to exit, but with some limited involvement with regards to trying to wreak revenge on those who were involved in the explosions that were just experienced the other day?
Who's that question for?
I'll start with you, Mike. Go right on ahead. Jump on in.
There are reports that another attack is going to take place. There's intelligence on that. This is any time that you withdrew from Afghanistan, it was going to be chaos. Okay. Now there are criticisms over how it was done and things like that. So August 31st is the deadline. What's really critical is what's going to happen September 1st. Okay. As it stands right now, all of the Afghanistanians who want to get out are not going to be able to get out. There may be some Americans. It appears there are going to be some Americans left behind as well. So what's really critical is what's going to happen after August 31st, what's going to happen September 1st. And because that's when August 31st is the last day based upon the agreement between the U.S. and the Taliban. So, this is, you have 13 U.S. troops who were killed. You have at least 170 people dead. You have at least 155 injured. So this is a catastrophe. The Pentagon clarified it was one explosion as opposed to 2 explosions when they had the press conference today. But I mean, really is no telling what's going to happen. This is a very fluid situation. This is a very fluid situation. So really, the most important thing, what I wanted to see is it's going to take place September 1st.
Me too. And when I think about really what's transpired in a short amount of time, yes, there can be, I believe, a lot of criticism about perhaps how this has the whole exit process occurred with regards to the late start of the evacuations. But when you look at how much has occurred in just a little bit of time, since August 14th, for example, the U.S. has evacuated and facilitated the evacuation of approximately 109,000 people. Right. Since August 14th. That's a whole hell of a lot of people. And if you go back to the end of July, it's relocated over 114, almost 115,000 people. So, a lot was going on until this happened the other day. So even though the ball got rolling late, I believe this is unprecedented in terms of the number of people, the sheer volume of people that were relocated out of this country at the end of a wartime situation, right? Sort of pivoting forward now, some people are suggesting that, is this going to be used as an excuse? I know we have the war hawks maybe that are saying that maybe we should, this might be used as an excuse to stay. But other people are saying, let's just keep going. Your thoughts about that, Kelly, with regards to what's going on right now. Do you think the Biden administration is going on the right track with regards to saying, hey, it sounds like to me, the last that I heard from the president, it sounds like to me, his thing is we are going to continue, even if we have to extend a little bit beyond August 31st, we are definitely going to continue this whole goal of completely extricating ourselves out of that situation. Is that really going to be even politically possible now, given the fact that you had this historic number, unfortunately, of Americans murdered in this process the other day?
A few things. One, is it possible? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a military expert. What I do know is that from the looks of things between the press conferences that Biden himself has held, his press secretary, and the military experts that I've seen doing the entire news cycle, it appears that it is possible and that Biden himself is really gung-ho about keeping to the August 31st deadline. If for any reason, anything after that will be more unstable as far as negotiations than it is now. As far as what you were talking about being, the exodus, the mass exodus that is happening right now in Afghanistan being unprecedented, you're absolutely right. Because I believe, I don't remember exactly what date it was, but when there was a mass exodus of Berlin during that war, that exodus took 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. This is by far the fastest one and the largest one in the span of time allotted. So anything that happens from here on out is going to be a feat that should more or less be considered a success regardless. As far as us going back there to, avenge the fallen right now, I don't think it's going to look as formal as some people are thinking it's going to be, meaning I don't think we're going to send in troops in the way that we sent in troops 20 years ago. I think it'll be more of a covert mission, similar to how we killed Osama bin Laden. And if we succeed, that's when we'll hear about it. As far as Americans staying, again, I'm not sure, but every tool in our tool belt available to us to get as many people out between now and the 31st, I definitely think that is going to happen to the best of our ability. but I don't think we're going to be going back in the way that we went 20 years ago, because if we do, that's going to be considered more of a failure than the mass exodus we're having right now.
Indeed. Adrian, looking at this from the perspective of just good old-fashioned politics, I think about the fact that President Biden came in and, some people call him boring. Other people said, hey, listen, at least the man can get stuff done. Okay. I would love no drama after everything we've just been traumatized with over the course of the past 4 years. So there was a lot of confidence in this administration that I would argue it lived up to early on, especially with regards to the rollout of the vaccine and just the huge stark contrast between that and the previous administration. Now this happens. Now I will, we do want to acknowledge here, I think it's very important to acknowledge that, his predecessor not only negotiated the end of American involvement there with the Taliban before he took office, he also had the bright idea of letting out 5,000 Taliban fighters. That was really smart. Okay, that was really, really smart. So Biden comes in, he has to deal with this place setting that he has inherited. However, Americans don't have long memories when it comes to things like that. Politically, how much damage do you think what some could term as a debacle this has on this particular administration, particularly as we're not that much far away from the beginning of a midterm campaign season being able to kick off?
Well, I think that as long as we continue to focus in and beat the drum that this was Trump's negotiated plan, you can kind of mitigate some of that blowback that your uninformed American may take away from the talking boxes of Fox News. But ultimately, when we've seen this previously, when President Obama inherited a crashing economy, they're going to blame the person who's in the seat at the moment. And it's especially convenient because it's a member of the opposite party. What I will also share or convey here is a similar level of dread and worry about what's going to happen September 1st. The Taliban is not a good faith actor. No matter how much they want to say they've reformed, they've learned, they're changing, they're evolving, that's a lie. And that attack on the airport was absolutely them as a means to slow down the evacuation efforts, because what they now have on September 1st are a whole bunch of hostages. And what they will try to do and what they will do to get it to those hostages is terrifying to me. I've got friends who are here stateside helping efforts over there to get people to the planes. They're not taking the bribes anymore to let people pass checkpoints. Like they know that the more hostages they have, the more negotiating power that they have. And, the position of the United States is not to negotiate with terrorists. And to Kelly's point, I do think that this is going to be something much more black ops or special ops versus above board rules of engagement sort of situation. But this is a very, very tenuous, terrifying situation for anyone who does not want to join the Taliban as an Afghani, or anyone who is an American citizen or another foreign national living there right now because of work. I very much have dread associated with what's getting ready to happen, because I do not see them in good faith coming back to the negotiating table to allow more people out of the country.
Well, that is, I think that's an excellent point, that what happens on September 1, no one knows, but it doesn't, one would expect it not to be good. Okay. And so the issue is the clock is ticking. And now the whole situation has been complicated by not only this most recent act, this explosion, this bombing, but also some intelligence that there might be another one coming up. So it's going to be that much more difficult to get more people out of the country. Let's talk a little bit about the implications of what the new Afghanistan is going to be post September 1, not only for the people who might be left behind, unfortunately, because honestly, they probably won't be able to get everybody out that they should be getting out, but also just for the women of Afghanistan writ large. There's been American involvement in that country now for 2 decades. There are little girls that have grown into womanhood, never having really known the terror of what they're about to experience. And so, I'm just thinking about the people who are going to be left behind, Afghanis as well as Americans, and what that is going to look like. Michael, when you think about the implications on those left behind, what's it going to be like under this more repressive, much more repressive rule, especially for the women of Afghanistan?
It's probably going to be hell for them because when they talk to representatives of the Taliban in the media, in the few media interviews that are done, they say that they will respect something to the effect of they will respect the rights of women as it pertains to Sharia law. Well, that's not good. That's not good in the first place. Okay, so there against women. They have very archaic, backwards views of the roles and careers that women should have. So for girls that grew up and they may be say 18, 19, 20 years old today, they don't know what it's like to grow up. So it's gonna be chaotic, and you probably have some type of revolt from within, from the Afghan people. You'll probably have some type of revolt against the oppressive rule of the Taliban. And the other thing, I'm trying to figure out is where are the? I know they get a lot of foreign aid, okay, and this is why the Taliban is not trying to play all their cards about how they're going to treat women, because of the foreign aid. But the other thing is like, okay, so where are the allies of the Afghans? Do they like have allies? I mean, we're the allies of the Afghans as well.
Iran is supposed to be where their allyships are. As the closest neighbor from a geopolitical standpoint, Iran has would have the most skin in the game and the most interest in stability there. And to your point about women and children who suffer the worst in situations like this, not just because of Sharia, but because it's war. and they're living in wars. We already have signs that were delivered to us on the ground by journalists and who are sort of sneak posting things online. I mean, they immediately started painting over images of women. Like, this is not everything that they are saying. They are literally doing the opposite on the ground, and it is terrifying. History has shown us that getting involved in this country is a money pit, and it will eat resources. And it's not as though the Afghani people don't deserve stability and don't deserve a government that they can that they can rely on and that they can trust. It's just increasingly it's proven to be increasingly difficult to establish that in a country where things like corruption are rampant, and why our efforts have been unsuccessful, even though my opinion is that the focus on nation building wasn't at the forefront here. The focus was building military might, and that's not enough. You can't build military might if you don't have the funds consistently going to your military to pay them for their services. So the nation building piece was missing from the front end and not well invested in enough. So now we're in the space where it's easy to buy somebody off because they haven't been paid their wages in 9 months. So So here we are. So I think our ultimate failure is the failure in nation building, in actual true nation building. And the people who are going to suffer the worst, like as in any conflict, are going to be the women and the children of Afghanistan, and it's heartbreaking. And I just hope September 1st they come to the table as a good faith actor and say, okay, sure, you can have the rest of your people, but here's our demands. And what will then be the position of Australia, of the UK, of the United States of America, of the UN? I mean, and all of the UN nations, like that piece is going to be critical, and it worries me, y'all. I'm not gonna lie.
It definitely is a lot to worry about. Shifting gears to, unfortunately, something else to worry about is Haiti. Right now, Haiti is reporting over 2,200 deaths and over 12,000 injuries from the natural disaster that it recently suffered. Haitian officials say 334 people are still missing after miraculously finding 8 people on Sunday. Panel, Kelly, starting with you, my heart breaks for Haiti. It absolutely breaks for Haiti. So much suffering in that country, on that island, an island that honestly, I feel such a great sense of love and respect for, given its role in history as it relates to African people all over the world, right? African descendant people. When I look at what's happening here, what really especially also breaks my heart is that I feel like there is so little that the rest of the world seems to be doing to make them whole. I see here that U.S. officials are sending them some $32 million to help to assist with relief in the country. But, given all the devastation that they've experienced, on top of not fully recovering from previous devastation, to me, it just sounds like a drop in the bucket, right? When you think about what's happening in Haiti, what should African Americans in particular do to find the right organizations to support, to make sure that we can help the people of Haiti right now, once again, in their hour of need? Because I know it's not just as simple as just making a donation anywhere. It's about finding the right places to give so that the money gets to the people who really need it.
Sure. So what Black people can do in this country is similar to what you just said. Find organizations that actually, are more boots on the ground on a humanitarian effort level to help Haitians specifically. A large reason that we don't give the way that we gave to Afghanistan for 20 years is because of the history of Haiti. Haiti, as we know, is really the only country that effectively, took slavery out of its country. And I think I said this on the show previously, it is going to be very difficult for the United States, dare I say impossible, to remotely understand the plight of Haitians and the needs of Haitians when we are historically, systemically racist. Like Haitians did everything in their power to not only dismantle white supremacy, but to uproot it and uplift their own people. We have not done that as Americans. For a multitude of reasons. The primary one being we just did not have the resources or the setup that Haiti did in order to get that done. But nevertheless, what Black Americans can do specifically, like the original question stated, find the organizations that are already on the ground. If you know Haitians in this country, see if they know people specifically where you can donate and the like. Dare I say, if you can afford it, make a flight down there and see how you can help. There are people who do that all the time. But as far as a national effort to help Haiti, I mean, yes, it's a drop in the bucket, but it's better than nothing. But also, I'm frankly surprised that the United States helps at all because of the history that we have with Haiti. And I think there's a level of resentment there from of a government perspective regarding Americans and Haitians, and that's, if not the only country that I can think of in this hemisphere that is not rooted in white supremacy. And we can't relate to that. So it's hard to help someone whom you cannot relate to.
Agreed. Michael, from a historical standpoint, as was stated here, Haiti historically fought for their freedom over and over and over again, and kept winning over and over and over again. And it seems as if centuries later, they're still being punished. Even when they're down, they're being kicked by not being supported properly to be able to recover. Any sort of a bit of like a quick little mini history lesson you can give our viewers around why Haiti has such a tremendous history that we should all be proud of.
Right. Well, they were first colonized by the Spanish it was Christopher Columbus right around 1492 that's going to conquer the island of Hispaniola. And then it's going to be, they're going to be taken over by the French. So they had two European colonizers, and we know you have the Haitian Revolution that starts in 1791, but it's going to be a big wealth producer for the French, and you have sugarcane plantations there, which were very brutal. And you have the Haitian Revolution of 1791 to 1803, and they declare their independence January 1st, 1804. You have a occupation by the U.S. Right around 1914, 1915 as well. But it wasn't until, if you go back to the Civil War, it wasn't until about 1862 that the U.S. recognized Haiti as an independent republic. Because this is during the U.S. Civil War, and you still had slavery in this country, and the U.S. did not want to recognize Haiti as an independent republic because the Africans overthrew their oppressors. They overthrew their colonizers in Haiti, and you have African people here in the ideas. Okay, and then also it should be noted that it's believed that Nat Turner's mother was from Haiti, because Nat Turner's mother comes to the U.S. in the 1790s. Her slave owner flees Haiti during the Haitian Revolution and comes into the U.S., as many slave owners did. They fled, and the U.S. was an ally to the French. It was the French, the British, and the U.S. They were allies against the Haitians during the Haitian Revolution also. So Haiti is still being punished to this day. And we have to understand that, a lot of those brothers and sisters in Haiti, they come from West Africa. They come from, the Ashanti. They come from the Akan. They come from the same places many of our people here in this country come from. We are related. We are one African people, regardless of where we are in this country. So Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, they are providing aid. They're taking up donations, my fraternity. So, you have different groups like that that are doing it. I would check with the NAACP, National Urban League, et cetera. But lastly, I would also check with the Congressional Black Caucus. If you have a member of the Congressional Black Caucus that's your representative or senator, I would check with their offices as well. Check the CBC's website, because oftentimes they will provide, they will have information and provide aid, et cetera. They will let you know about different organizations, et cetera, that you can, legitimate organizations that you can support also.
Absolutely wonderful advice. I want to take a minute to thank the entire panel this evening. You guys were excellent, of course, as normal. Great having you on the show tonight. And thank everyone for watching us and joining us tonight on Roland Martin Unfiltered. If you'd like to support the show, please do continue to do that so that we can bring you those stories, that perspective, that views. So do not forget to donate to Roland Martin Unfiltered right now. You can go right to Cash App at Roland RM Unfiltered, to PayPal, to Venmo, to Zelle. all of those different places to donate to Roland Martin Unfiltered. This is an independent Black show, and we want to make sure that it stays on the air. Once again, my name is Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, and it's my pleasure to sit in today for Roland Martin. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And don't forget, holla at your girl. Have a great weekend. See you next time. Bye.